this is how we see things, that we believe this is a tactic that could work. Like, no, these kids have to be taken care of. They're not to be used as a pawn, you know. Those kind of situations is where they can work things out, okay, let's do it this way. But everything has to be explained from the get-go. So nothing normally works well when you start having this Hail Mary in the middle of operation. This thing has to be set from the get-go before we start the campaign.
All right, you have been in Afghanistan and other parts of the world, and you have seen this fight against terrorism, so to say. Now, the Nigerian army has admitted that this fight against Boko Haram is not a conventional war. It's not like two governments, you know, or two countries fighting each other and all of that. It's an ideological war that you don't necessarily have your opponents wearing certain kind of military or uniforms to identify them. But here in Nigeria, we have been fighting this for quite a while. Even if the Nigerian army is not trained originally, you know, to fight any kind of war that is not conventional, how long would it take for the Nigerian army or security agencies to master the process of how to handle this situation? Because it seems like we go after a little few months of peace, and then everything escalates again and all of that.
It's if I tell you, I mean, we're still fighting. We have presence in Iraq and Afghanistan. This has been over a decade we've been doing this. This thing, there's no timeline to this. Ideology cannot be completely wiped out, and even if you do, you don't even know they have sleeper cells somewhere else. And that's all this thing. That's how crazy this thing is. I remember in 2008 when I was involved in when General Azazi was still alive. We actually approached Pentagon, and he saw this coming. He's a very foresight general and very brilliant. I saw this thing happening before even the public got wind of Boko Haram, who they are as an entity, and it's actually solicited the U.S. government for training, which I was part of it, to help train a group of counterterrorism unit. I don't know what became of them. To be honest with you, once we finished our training, I don't know what became of that unit. But that unit is supposed to have be the edge out there, the tip of the spear. And going out there and sorting this thing out before it actually got to what it is right now. But unfortunately, the actions or inactions or whatever happened back then, we're actually seeing in a full display right now. The ideology is hard to wipe out. And we have to, as we use in Afghanistan, as we use the same thing in Iraq, we have to sit down. Obviously, there's a lot of peace talk going on right now. And that is what it has to take. At some point, we have to understand that we cannot win this thing by fighting. You know, we have to figure out other methods. You know, you cannot remove ideology from people's mind. It's just one thing, just like a religion.
Maybe replace the ideology by
maybe,
another kind of
and the different terrain dictates different approach. You know, what works in Iraq and Afghanistan might absolutely not work in northeastern part of Nigeria. And that's what we need to see. This thing doesn't. It requires, I know it's a military effort, but it requires the sociological aspect, the anthropological aspect. There's a wide range of disciplines that needs to happen in here, that needs to be factored in here. It's not something that, just gone, matched, boots on ground every time. It's not going to work. I mean, you get some kind of success to a large extent, but and then what?
Everything comes back again.
Exactly, exactly. So there's a lot of reorientation that needs to happen. There's a lot of education that needs to happen. So this thing is, we need more hands on deck to do this.
And while there should be re-strategizing on the part of the military,
yes,
you find that the Boko Haram, the terrorists, are actually re-strategizing,
exactly,
on their own part. I mean, in the last 24 hours, we heard that, some terrorists have been dressing like aid workers.
Exactly. This thing has no permutation to it, because you can never imagine. You always have the worst case scenario. And I always tell them, whatever is happening in the northeastern part of Nigeria should be concerned for every Nigerian. Even in Lagos, we should be concerned, because these folks, they don't have to go out there, boots on ground, and recruit. They can use Twitter, they can use social media to recruit people that work for them, that fight for them, the ideology. I mean, we've seen it in ISIS, and ISIS have pledged whoever, I don't know who pledged what to what, but I know both of them are in kind of some kind of collaboration right now, and they're using social media to recruit people to work for them. So this thing, they're already ahead of what we already originally thought this is all about.
In fact, the reports of them using drones, they've started using drones now.
And foreign
mercenaries.
Exactly. I mean, you'll be surprised how sophisticated are these folks. You know, before we're talking about infiltration of weapons from Libya, when Libya actually, you know, the regime in Libya went down, but this is even much more. You know, and we have to be proactive. We have to use all hands on that technology and whatnot.
The Nigerian government has ordered for the 12 Super Tucano aircraft from the United States, and it's going to take maybe the next more than a year for that to be for that to be manufactured and sent to Nigeria. So what happens between now and that time? Do you see the military being helpless in any way?
I don't think I think the will to fight is the number one of all. The will to fight, and I would say kudos to Nigerian military. I mean, you have to give it to them, because I fought terrorism not on the soil of America. I fought terrorism outside the borders of America. But you can only imagine Nigerian soldiers fighting people that will actually be their relatives, you know, and open warfare in their own country. It's nothing that you cannot, I mean, you can't imagine. You cannot fathom what goes through their mind on a daily basis. And that is quite hard. And so you just imagine them fighting.
That strategy of taking the war to the insurgents, to you know, the terrorists, seem to be working for the United States. I mean, you've not had any situation in the homeland, you know, America. But let's even quickly come back to this issue. The UNICEF situation is not I mean, alone. It's not a standalone situation. You've had cases where aid organizations have had, you know, have been accused of compromising somewhat. I mean, you've had Oxfam involvement in all kinds of, you know, sex scandals, UNAMSIL and the rest of them. Is there a need to actually investigate the activities of this aid organization?
If there is any, I mean, there is a need. Everything that is looking way off, I mean, I believe there should be investigation. But let's look at the larger, let's broaden the scope a little bit. We cannot continue to say that these are the folks that are primarily responsible for some of the filtration of information from Boko Haram side to Nigerian military or whatnot. So we have to look at it at large. What is being compromised? Because it's a very broad word. What means compromise to me completely might be different from you, and these words are being used loosely these days. So it might be because they don't see things different. They see things differently from them. They believe they're compromised. You know, so there has to be a mutual understanding when I say compromise. What is it? And is it because I'm not sharing information you think I should be sharing with you, or I believe that what you're doing is illegal? I mean, you want to be killing kids, and I said no, you can't. You know, all this. I'm not saying this is what's going on, but there has to be a broader understanding of what compromise is, because I mean, you just read in the media compromise, but you don't really know what actually was going on. Or is the military
just trying to get, you know,
exactly, and I'm not accusing
off its hair because they've been accused of human rights violations and all of that. Is this a way of them getting back?
It might be. I don't know, but I don't know the narrative. But there's that deeper. I mean, there's so much story underneath that needs to be unearthed, and people can actually fully understand. And I think there should be an investigation, even need be that this thing actually there's a persistent and there's consistency.
Because when it comes to UNICEF and the Red Cross Society, these are international organizations, reputable organizations that have existed for so many years, and they have credibility across the world. But when the military makes a move like this, one would say, well, let's even play the devil's advocate. Should we really investigate to see if maybe 1, 2, 3 staff of that agency organization are working to sabotage, you know, the system and all of that? If that has to be, let us even create a scenario. If that has to be, who will do the investigation?
It has to be from United Nations or somebody that has a joint body that both Nigeria and this organization actually call for. But you also have to understand that these organizations recruit from the local community. So it's not too far-fetched. That allegation is not too far-fetched. It's not like they're going to bring somebody from US or Austria to come and work over there. They will rely on local workers that know the terrain to actually work for them. So if those local terrain have families that are involved in this, so it's not too far-fetched of an allegation, but at the same time, I mean, it's worth looking into.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Major Adebayo Adeleke retired, 20 years experience in the U.S. Army. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much.